It's funny how the smallest things can shatter your entire world. For me, it wasn't lipstick on a collar or a suspicious text message, it was the silent accusation of data points on a fitness tracking app. I'd given Sarah the latest model Fitbit for our anniversary, partly because she'd been talking about getting more active, but mostly because I love supporting her goals. That's what husbands do, right? They encourage their wives' aspirations, celebrate their successes. I even synced our accounts so we could share achievements, maybe do some friendly step competitions. The first few months were great. Sarah's enthusiasm for her fitness journey seemed genuine. She'd come home energized from her evening gym sessions, talking about personal bests and workout milestones. I felt proud watching her numbers climb: steps, calories burned, active minutes. All trending upward. Then I noticed the first anomaly. It was a Tuesday evening when I was reviewing our shared dashboard, something I did occasionally just to cheer her on. Sarah had texted earlier saying she was at the gym, as usual. But according to her tracker, she'd only logged 127 steps in the last hour. My analytical mind, honed by years of working with data, couldn't ignore this discrepancy. A typical gym session should show thousands of steps, elevated heart rate, active minutes. This looked more like someone sitting still. I told myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe she forgot to wear it. Maybe there was a syncing issue. But once you notice one anomaly in a dataset, you start seeing patterns everywhere. Like how her gym nights always showed similar patterns: minimal movement during supposed workout times, followed by sudden bursts of activity in unfamiliar locations across town. Or how her heart rate would spike in these mysterious places, but not in the rhythmic patterns of exercise. The data painted a picture I didn't want to see. Numbers don't lie, but people do. I started documenting everything methodically, creating spreadsheets comparing her reported locations with the tracker's GPS data. The evidence mounted, each data point driving the knife deeper into my chest. My wife's fitness journey was a carefully constructed facade, hiding something far more sinister. The worst part? She didn't even realize her own tracker was betraying her secrets. Every sync, every automated update, every GPS ping, they all told the true story of where she went and what she was doing. Or rather, who she was doing it with. Tonight, as I write this, Sarah is supposedly at another gym session. Her tracker shows she's actually at an address I've now documented 12 times in the past month. A residential address. I've watched the pattern repeat with scientific precision: minimal movement, elevated heart rate, all the telltale signs of passion rather than exercise. I should confront her. Any normal person would. But the analyst in me needs more data, more evidence, more certainty. So I watch the numbers tick by on my screen, each one a tiny betrayal, while my heart silently breaks in perfect sync with her falsified step count. The question now isn't if she's cheating, the data makes that painfully clear. It's funny how the smallest things can shatter your entire world. For me, it wasn't lipstick on a collar or a suspicious text message, it was the silent accusation of data points on a fitness tracking app. I'd given Sarah the latest model Fitbit for our anniversary, partly because she'd been talking about getting more active, but mostly because I love supporting her goals. That's what husbands do, right? They encourage their wives' aspirations, celebrate their successes. I even synced our accounts so we could share achievements, maybe do some friendly step competitions. The first few months were great. Sarah's enthusiasm for her fitness journey seemed genuine. She'd come home energized from her evening gym sessions, talking about personal bests and workout milestones. I felt proud watching her numbers climb: steps, calories burned, active minutes. All trending upward. Then I noticed the first anomaly. It was a Tuesday evening when I was reviewing our shared dashboard, something I did occasionally just to cheer her on. Sarah had texted earlier saying she was at the gym, as usual. But according to her tracker, she'd only logged 127 steps in the last hour. My analytical mind, honed by years of working with data, couldn't ignore this discrepancy. A typical gym session should show thousands of steps, elevated heart rate, active minutes. This looked more like someone sitting still. I told myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe she forgot to wear it. Maybe there was a syncing issue. But once you notice one anomaly in a dataset, you start seeing patterns everywhere. Like how her gym nights always showed similar patterns: minimal movement during supposed workout times, followed by sudden bursts of activity in unfamiliar locations across town. Or how her heart rate would spike in these mysterious places, but not in the rhythmic patterns of exercise. The data painted a picture I didn't want to see. Numbers don't lie, but people do. I started documenting everything methodically, creating spreadsheets comparing her reported locations with the tracker's GPS data. The evidence mounted, each data point driving the knife deeper into my chest. My wife's fitness journey was a carefully constructed facade, hiding something far more sinister. The worst part? She didn't even realize her own tracker was betraying her secrets. Every sync, every automated update, every GPS ping, they all told the true story of where she went and what she was doing. Or rather, who she was doing it with. Tonight, as I write this, Sarah is supposedly at another gym session. Her tracker shows she's actually at an address I've now documented 12 times in the past month. A residential address. I've watched the pattern repeat with scientific precision: minimal movement, elevated heart rate, all the telltale signs of passion rather than exercise. I should confront her. Any normal person would. But the analyst in me needs more data, more evidence, more certainty. So I watch the numbers tick by on my screen, each one a tiny betrayal, while my heart silently breaks in perfect sync with her falsified step count. The question now isn't if she's cheating, the data makes that painfully clear. The question is, what do I do with this information? How do I confront someone who's rewritten our entire reality while leaving a digital trail of breadcrumbs to her infidelity? Should I continue gathering evidence? Would you want to know what happens next as I unravel this web of deception? Let me know if I should share part 2 of how technology revealed my wife's double life. The confrontation wasn't explosive. It was methodical, calculated, like everything else in this ordeal. I waited until a Thursday evening, knowing her pattern would have her returning from another gym session at precisely 9:47 p.m., based on the average arrival time from my dataset. I had my laptop open, spreadsheets arranged with clinical precision. Timestamps, locations, heart rate patterns, 3 months of documented deception laid out in neat columns and color-coded cells. The analyst in me had prepared for every possible denial, every attempted deflection. She walked in at 9:49 p.m., cheeks flushed, hair slightly disheveled. Right on schedule. "How was your workout?" I asked, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "Great. Really pushed myself today." She smiled, that same practiced smile I'd documented 47 times in my notes. I turned my laptop screen toward her. "That's interesting, because according to your tracker, you only took 173 steps in the last 2 hours. But your heart rate," I highlighted the relevant cells, "shows several sustained elevations. Particularly between 8:22 p.m. and 9:15 p.m. The color drained from her face. I watched her expression shift through the stages I'd anticipated: confusion, realization, fear, and finally, desperate calculation. "There must be something wrong with the tracker," she started, but I was already pulling up the GPS data. "The tracker seems to be working perfectly," I continued, my voice maintaining its analytical tone. "It's accurately recording your location." I zoomed in on the map. "For instance, it shows you've spent an average of 93 minutes at this address." I pointed to James's house on the screen, 12 times in the past month. She sank into the chair across from me, her facade crumbling under the weight of irrefutable data. "I can explain," she whispered. "I'm sure you can," I replied, switching to a new spreadsheet. "Would you like to explain the pattern of decreased intimacy in our marriage that correlates perfectly with your increasing visits to this location? Or perhaps the inverse relationship between our date nights and your gym sessions?" My clinical approach was cracking, emotion seeping through the cracks in my analytical armor. "I've documented everything, Sarah. Every lie, every inconsistency, every moment you chose him over me. It's all here, time-stamped and verified. The data doesn't lie, even when you do. She broke down then, not because of guilt, I realized, but because she'd been caught. Her tears weren't for our marriage or my pain, they were for her shattered illusion of control. "I never meant to hurt you," she said, using the exact phrase I'd predicted in my notes under expected responses. "According to my documentation, you've had approximately 47 opportunities to come clean. Instead, you chose to create elaborate fitness-related cover stories, which I've cataloged here." I pulled up another spreadsheet, this one detailing every fabricated workout routine she described. "How long have you known?" she asked. "Long enough to compile conclusive evidence. Long enough to consult with a lawyer. Long enough to transfer our assets into protected accounts." Her head snapped up at that last part. Of course, money was her next concern, not our disintegrating marriage. "I've prepared divorce papers," I continued, pulling a folder from my desk. "They're quite favorable to you, considering the circumstances. I suggest you review them with your lawyer. Though I should warn you, the terms become significantly less generous if you choose to dispute the evidence I've gathered." She stared at me, this methodical stranger who had replaced her trusting husband. "When did you become so cold?" I smiled without humor. "I'm not cold, Sarah. I'm thorough. There's a difference. One you might have noticed if you'd paid as much attention to our marriage as I paid to your betrayal. The aftermath of exposure follows its own predictable pattern. I'd studied enough behavioral psychology during my investigation to anticipate each phase of Sarah's response: denial, bargaining, manipulation, and finally, desperate acceptance. What I hadn't predicted was my own emotional algorithm, the calculated way I processed each stage of our separation. While she flailed against the inevitable, I executed my carefully constructed exit strategy with practiced precision. The morning after our confrontation, I initiated Phase 1, extraction. "I'll be staying at a corporate apartment I've secured," I informed her over coffee, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "You can keep the house for now, it's already factored into the settlement calculations." She looked up from her untouched breakfast, eyes searching for the husband she'd known, the one who would have begged her to stay, who would have tried to understand, to fix things. Instead, she found the analyst I'd become, the man who had transformed betrayal into spreadsheets and heartbreak into action items. "That's it? After 15 years, you're just leaving?" Her voice cracked on the last word. I pulled out my phone, opening the tracker app one final time. "According to my data, you left long ago. I'm just finally catching up to that reality." The corporate apartment became my command center for Phase 2, reconstruction. I approached rebuilding my life with the same methodical attention I'd given to documenting its destruction. Each day was carefully structured. 6 a.m., gym, actual exercise, logged with precise metrics. 8 a.m., work, where I'd earned 2 promotions during my investigation. 6 p.m., personal development, therapy, networking, building new routines. 10 p.m., review and adjust next day's optimization strategy. I tracked everything: mood variations, productivity metrics, recovery milestones. Each small victory became a data point in my personal reformation. Sarah's attempts at reconciliation followed their predicted pattern. First came the tearful phone calls, ignored, then the lengthy emails, archived as evidence, and finally, the desperate attempt to leverage mutual friends, anticipated and preemptively addressed. "You've turned so cold," she accused during our final meeting with the lawyers. "Not cold," I corrected her, sliding across my final analysis. "Strategic. For instance, I can tell you the exact moment our marriage ended: February 15th at 8:47 p.m., when you first disabled location sharing on your tracker. Everything since then has been data collection and response formulation." The divorce proceedings moved swiftly, thanks to my meticulous documentation. Her lawyer blanched when I presented my evidence, not just tracker data now, but financial records, phone logs, a comprehensive timeline of deception that made negotiation futile. Today marks 6 months since implementation day. My new apartment overlooks the city, its floor-to-ceiling windows flooding my home office with natural light as I compile this final report. My own fitness tracker shows improved metrics across all categories: physical health, sleep patterns, stress levels. Sarah still wears her tracker, I know, because I maintain access to the account. Old habits die hard. But now I watch her data with academic detachment, noting how her patterns have shifted since our separation. Decreased activity levels. Irregular sleep patterns. Elevated stress indicators. New locations that no longer trigger emotional responses in my analysis. The last time I checked, her tracker showed her at James's house again. The difference is, I no longer care enough to log the data point. Instead, I'm focusing on my own metrics for success. My spreadsheets now track personal growth instead of betrayal, opportunities instead of deceptions. I've learned that healing, like investigation, requires systematic attention to detail. My therapist suggests sharing these experiences might help others recognize patterns in their own relationships. So here's my final data point: sometimes the best analysis leads not to reconciliation, but to reconstruction. Would you like to know how the story ends? How I finally found happiness in unexpected metrics and discovered that the best revenge is a life well documented? Let me know if you want an epilogue to this exercise in data-driven divorce. A year has passed since I transformed betrayal into data points. While my analytical mind still seeks patterns in everything, I've learned that some metrics can't be quantified, like the weight of silence in an empty apartment, or the strange relief of no longer monitoring another person's deceptions. I maintain my structured approach to recovery. Phase 3: Optimization. Morning routine refined to maximize productivity. Social interactions cataloged and evaluated for authenticity. Professional advancement tracked against personal growth metrics. Weekly therapy sessions documented with measurable progress indicators. The corporate apartment became my laboratory for self-experimentation. Each room represented a different aspect of reconstruction. Home office, career advancement, 3 promotions in 18 months. Gym room, physical transformation, BMI optimization achieved. Living room, social reintegration, carefully selected interactions. Bedroom, reclaiming intimate space, most challenging metric to address. Sarah attempted contact exactly 7 times during this period. Each attempt followed a predictable pattern. Initial emotional appeal. Reference to shared history. Subtle manipulation attempt. Retreat when met with analytical response. I documented each interaction with clinical detachment, noting diminishing emotional impact with each occurrence. The data showed clear trending toward indifference, a metric I hadn't initially thought possible. Then came the unexpected variable, Claire. She wasn't part of my recovery algorithm. We met at a technical conference where I was presenting data visualization strategies. She approached afterward with questions about my methodology, and I found myself engaging in conversation that exceeded my planned social interaction parameters for the day. Claire was different. She didn't trigger my need to analyze or document. Her presence introduced new metrics I hadn't considered. Spontaneous laughter frequency. Decreased time spent reviewing historical data. Improved sleep quality without performance tracking. Natural conversation flow without strategic planning. You don't have to log everything, she told me one evening, noticing me updating my daily metrics. Some experiences are meant to be lived, not documented. The analyst in me resisted initially. But she was right, I'd become so focused on measuring recovery that I'd forgotten to experience it. Claire helped me understand that not every interaction needed spreadsheet validation. My therapist noted significant progress. Your healing isn't measured in data points anymore. It's evident in how you've stopped treating life like a system to be debugged. The irony wasn't lost on me. Sarah's fitness tracker had exposed her infidelity, but my own obsession with tracking and measuring had nearly prevented my recovery from it. Now I maintain a balance. Some metrics still tracked for stability. Others allowed to exist without documentation. New experiences embraced without preliminary analysis. Emotions permitted to flow without immediate categorization. Claire doesn't wear a fitness tracker. She jogs every morning, practices yoga, lives fully in each moment without digital validation. It's refreshingly honest, no data to analyze, no patterns to scrutinize, just authentic presence. Recently, I deleted Sarah's tracker from my account. The final data point showed her still frequenting James's location, but the information no longer held any emotional weight. It was just numbers on a screen, irrelevant to my recalibrated life. Should I share how Claire helped me finally break free from the endless cycle of data analysis? How I learned that some of life's most meaningful metrics can't be tracked or quantified. Let me know if you want to hear the final chapter of how I found happiness beyond the spreadsheets. The true measure of healing, I've learned, isn't found in spreadsheets or tracking apps. It reveals itself in small moments of unplanned joy, in the ability to experience life without immediately categorizing every feeling or interaction. Claire taught me this gradually, systematically dismantling my defensive algorithms with persistent authenticity. One morning, as we shared coffee on my balcony, she asked a simple question that restructured my entire approach to recovery. When was the last time you did something without analyzing it first? I opened my mouth to respond, then realized I couldn't remember. Every action, every decision since Sarah's betrayal had been carefully measured, documented, evaluated. I'd created a fortress of data to protect myself from further hurt, but I'd also walled myself off from genuine experience. That morning marked a turning point. I decided to conduct one final experiment, living without metrics for one full week. The results were illuminating. Day 1, intense anxiety without my tracking systems. Day 3, first genuine belly laugh in 2 years. Day 5, spontaneous road trip with Claire, no itinerary. Day 7, first night without checking my recovery spreadsheets. The most profound discovery came unexpectedly. During dinner with Claire's family, her young niece asked me to play blocks with her. I found myself sitting on the floor, building precarious towers with no structural analysis, laughing when they fell, starting again with no documentation of failure rates or success metrics. It was there, surrounded by scattered blocks and childish giggles, that I finally understood. I'd been so focused on measuring my healing that I'd forgotten to actually heal. Sarah reached out one final time last month. Her message was predictable: regret, apologies, hints at reconciliation. But for the first time, I didn't log it in my incident spreadsheet. I simply deleted it, feeling nothing but a mild curiosity at my lack of emotional response. Claire watched me do it, saying nothing but understanding everything. Later that night, she confessed something that would have once sent me spiraling into data collection mode. I declined a job offer in Seattle to stay here with you, she said quietly. I didn't tell you because I didn't want it to become another variable in your analysis. Some decisions are meant to be made with the heart, not algorithms. I surprised myself by not immediately opening my laptop to create a pros/cons spreadsheet. Instead, I pulled her close and whispered, "Move in with me." No analysis. No documentation. Just pure, unquantified feeling. Today, my home office still has its spreadsheets and data visualizations, but they're for work projects only. The walls that once held charts tracking my recovery now display photos, Claire and me hiking, family gatherings, moments of joy captured not in numbers but in smiles. My final data point? Happiness doesn't need to be measured to be real. The fitness tracker that exposed Sarah's betrayal sits in my desk drawer, a reminder that while technology can reveal truth, it can't teach you how to live with it. That comes from allowing yourself to experience life unfiltered, embracing both pain and joy without trying to reduce them to manageable metrics. Claire doesn't know I'm planning to propose next month. There's no spreadsheet analyzing the perfect moment, no data tracking the probability of her response. For the first time in years, I'm letting my heart lead instead of my head. Sometimes the best analysis is realizing when to stop analyzing.